All right, we're going to jump into it like we do every week. Welcome to another episode of the Bladeology podcast. This is episode 36, part 2. We are talking with Rainy Vallotton of Vallotton Custom Knives. So, Rainy, you briefed over something that I wanna check back on because I think it's an important. You were saying that you built knives for Almar, and I know that. So the Vallottons are known for a couple things, but definitely the one thing that I remember strongly was you guys being able to turn just about, obviously within reason, most manual folders into automatics. And that's definitely, that's a calling card that I think a lot of people recognize, which is the conversion part of your sort of business. And I was wondering if you want to talk about that a little bit, because I remember a famous story of Chris Reeve finding out that your dad converted a Sebenza, and that's yeah. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about the stuff before we talk about the Chris Reeves part of it. That's the better part. So back in the day, my dad thought it'd be a really great idea to just buy already built knives and throw a function in them. And it sounded great. But one thing about my dad he was really good at is he'd come up with a really great idea and then try and prove it afterwards. And sometimes it would tend to make people a little crazy, notably my brother and myself. Because he'd always want to do it with the Soldier of Fortune model. It was always a new function, a new idea, a new something or other. And sometimes it was so last minute, we'd already have knives that needed function, but no function was going in them because he hadn't figured it out yet. So he started doing the odd and end conversions. He did some of the original Almar Sear lockbacks, which taught us really early on that we didn't want to convert already existing lockbacks. They're converting a lockback to begin with is a sucky process, and then getting one to fit nice and clean and be right, and you have to replace the pins, and nobody wanted screws back in their knives, which made a lot more sense. So that way you could take it apart. Liken it to if you buy a Maserati and you weld the hood shut, that was kind of like putting pins in an automatic for us. It didn't make any sense. You're going to have to get in there and fix it maybe.
Yeah.
So he did all these conversions and stuff, and he did quite a few. He did some William Henrys at one time. He even got me into a couple of those. I learned to hate those really quick because they're so thin. They're a sweet little knife, but they're a nightmare to convert. And then I've done some all kinds of conversions, but he was really into it and did a bunch of them. Like I said, he started with some of the Almars and stuff first because him and Al were really good friends. And then somebody asked him if he would turn a Chris Reeves Sebenza into an auto. And Dad said, well, I don't know. Let me look at the thing and see what I can figure out. So he does it. Not only does he do it, but he does it really sweet. No extra screws, just gets a button and turns it in an automatic. And that turned into a landslide of, can you fix my Sebenza and make it auto?
Oh,
and so he did some overscales, which was basically a nice piece of pearl or mammoth molar, or not molar, but mammoth ivory. And it'd have a pivot point near the rear, and the front would just be a bar that would penetrate inside of a short slot. So you could pivot a function and make it fire. So he was doing that. And Chris found out. Well, Chris is very anti-automatic. I've had dinner with Chris. Oh, yeah. He's South African.
Right. I've never met him, so I don't know. I'm just going off what I'm told.
We had dinner across the street at Mangio's, that Italian place.
Yeah.
There at Blade. And he had invited in some friends from Milan and another part of Italy. They were all his friends. I don't know if you ever know anything about Chris, but that man's had a wild life. So he brings in these Italian guys, and we all sit and had dinner, and he was telling us about his cross-country run on a bike he bought and did a little work on, and he said, everybody, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to take off and drive. You guys follow me, and we'll just have a good time.
All right.
So he literally just started driving across Africa.
Wow.
I don't know how far he got. He got pretty buzzed near the end of the story, so it kind of went a little south. But eventually, he figured out Dad was converting his knives into autos, and we get a note from a lawyer, a cease and desist note. Well, I don't know if you guys are aware, but if you buy a car from a company and you pay for it, it's yours. You can paint it, you can scrap it, you can put big wheels on it, you can do anything you want with it.
Right.
Well, that's kind of the same way with a custom knife or a regular knife. It's yours. So the cease and desist was kind of a threat more than anything else. There was nothing really behind it. He couldn't really make it stop. So Dad looked at me. He says, what do you think I should do? I said, I think you shouldn't worry about it. I'll keep going. He says, but it's a cease and desist. I said, cease and desist? I mean, you built, it's yours. You're not buying knives from Chris to convert. You're getting the knives from the owners of these knives to convert. Chris doesn't really have anything to say about it. I mean, he may not be happy about it, but that's irrelevant because it's not his knife anymore. So then we got another note, and it was a little more strongly worded. It's still a cease and desist overall, but it was a much stronger note.
Wow.
But it's that's a case of somebody's ego getting in front of common sense. But
I can understand.
If you ever got a chance to meet, if you ever get a chance to meet Chris, before anyway.
Yeah.
You won't get a chance these days, but before he was an animated kind of guy with stories, and another Mel Pardue, only much more wild.
Yeah, that's one of those industry stories that I definitely I've heard, and some people. It's funny that you mentioned that. I think that's definitely a knife community discussion, but I think a lot of makers are very impassioned about what happens to their knife after it's been sold.
Well, if that were a custom or something, I could understand that. But like if it's a production knife, like that's kind of out of your hands.
It is. Yeah. It is. And that's what I told my dad. I said, if you buy a truck and you destroy it, it's yours to destroy.
Right.
If you buy a Sabenza and you want to grind the whole thing in half, just don't ask for help on fixing it from Chris.
Yeah, it's I mean, you have to modify. I mean, once you sell some at a production level or whatever, like people are going to do stuff with it,
Well, that nifty little wave thing that he does? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we did that with a thumb stud. Get a little longer thumb stud.
The Emerson wave?
Oh, yeah, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We're talking Emerson. Yep.
Yeah.
I get those guys crossed up. But, it was
the wave,
it was still crazy. No, the wave, we used to do that with a thumb stud. Make a slightly longer thumb stud on the inside of your pocket. So when you stuck it in with your clip, you just pushed the blade against your pocket and opened it up, and it flung the blade out.
Yeah, that's a logical one. It's the wave
sense.
Is yeah.
He didn't invent the wave.
No,
one of his customers did.
Yeah, it was like a guard or something for knife fighting or whatever, and then it just happened to have that secondary function.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. At one time you could buy a special. It was more or less a zip tie if you want to get technical, but it was a heavy-headed zip tie, and you could put it on like the Spyderco loop or the hole.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And stick it in your pocket and snap it right out the same way.
I did that I've never done that on a Spyderco, but I did that on a Benchmade Onslaught because it had a spider hole in it. So
yeah, a customer of mine.
Just easy.
A customer of mine sent me a pair of Daltons, and they had those on them. It was a right and left matching set of Daltons.
Oh, that's actually pretty neat.
Yeah, so you could put one in one pocket, one in the other, and then jerk them out with those funny little things on there.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, wow. I never thought about that. Man, you could sell like a set of knives.
You fucked up, Elijah. You needed 2 Onslaughts and
2 in 1. There you go.
Well, no, it's giving me ideas right now, actually.
Oh man,
All right,
there's so
let's
much
see
out
here.
there to play with.
Yeah.
I got stuff that I wanted to do forever, and I'm busy doing orders, so I never get a chance to do the stuff I want to do. But the only one thing I get, the saving grace for all that is I get a lot of customers that say, "Hey, this is the pattern I want. Have a ball,"
Seems like a
Question,
content
Josh.
maker struggle.
Do you exhibit at the New York Custom Knife Show?
No, I never have. My dad and mom did one year, and that's as close as we've ever got. I'm not really a big fan of city anymore.
Gotcha. No, because I'm trying to remember.
I grew up in the Bay Area, so
My first experience of what will be considered a full dress custom was a Valloton. The problem is I don't know which Valloton it was, because now I'm assuming it was from a dealer. So it was the New York Custom Knife Show about 10 years ago. It was my first custom knife show. I was 13 years old then. I guess it was 11 years
wow.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been in this industry. I'm 24 now, but I've been doing this since I was 13. And back then it was Sabenza or Strider, and I was like, okay, which one do I buy? Which one do I buy? Ended up leaving that show with neither. And next year buying what I wanted, but that was I didn't know about custom knives. I knew the Sabenza, the Strider, and the Hinder, and Spyderco and Benchmade. That was what I looked at. And when I went there to go buy a Sabenza or Strider, I saw this whole world of custom knives. And I ended up buying neither just because I was like, wait, there's a lot more out there. I got to figure this out first before I make my decision. Being 13 years old, I was like, it's $300 to $400 for a knife. Like, I got to figure out what I want to do. But the first full dress thing I saw happened to be a Valloton with Blue Mammoth and Blue Damascus. And I was blown away because at that time, it was the first knife I've seen that was blue. Like, even the blade, I was like, what is this?
It was custom.
Yeah,
It
so
was
that's
probably-
because you were at that show.
it was probably Hank Rebel.
What, Nick, was it like a dealer case or was it on someone's table?
I don't remember at that point. It's probably a dealer's case because back then even knife makers used a lot of cases. When I was 13, I guess that was 2008 or 2009. The New York Knife Show, because there's a lot of the knife thing wasn't still as comfortable glass cases back then. So very few guys had knives just sitting there on the table.
Most of the shows I went to when I was younger, they would always have glass cases.
We've had ours out for people to touch and play with, and forever. We only had 1 year where Blade Show got weirded out and wanted us to put them under glass.
Really? They actually said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. I think somebody managed to cut themselves, but it's a knife show. Good God, people!
It's true. It's going to happen.
If you're worried about getting cut, I've seen some spectacularly stupid stuff. The day that I met Ralph Dewey Harris, we were in the right side of that small building, and I had just walked away from his table, and a guy come walking along swinging a duffel bag. One of the, you zip it up and the handles are above the zipper. Mm-hmm. And he smacked this guy in the side of his thigh, and a Bowie knife that wasn't in a sheath slammed forward, went through the duffel bag and through this guy's pants and into his leg. Wearing white pants, you could watch them turn red. It was like somebody was painting them. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? What?" All of a sudden, there's people there. They strapped a tourniquet on this poor guy. Had an ambulance in there. This guy's like apologizing. You're apologizing for swinging a deadly weapon, dude. Crazy.
Yeah, that's
it's easy to forget that they're all deadly weapons. It's like
he had
once you're always around them, you should get comfortable.
Yeah, well, he had 8 or 10 of these in there, but he only had one not in a sheath. But when he hit that guy, he hit it really solid, and it just slid right through there. It was a big Bowie. It had to be 15 or 16 inches tip to tail and 3/8 thick.
I wanted to go back to let's see, two quick things. Collaborations. We briefed over that, but there's one collaboration that till this day is still in production by Spyderco, which is the Subhilt.
Right.
that Butch did.
Mm-hmm.
So was that must have originally been a custom, or did he design that from scratch for Spyderco?
It was he did a couple of them. They were a custom, but they didn't have the Spyderco hole. So he and Sal got together, and Sal and him kind of worked it out where he would use the hole. In fact, I think he's got a prototype of it still in my mom's possession that actually was the very first prototype of that knife. But he put the Spyderco hole in it, and he did a few other modifications that Sal wanted, and that's how that was born. Except my dad designed the function to go in it at the same time that he sent Sal out the prototype, so that when Sal started producing them, we were buying them at 100 at a time, converting them and reselling them, which of course gave rise to the Spyderco Subhill automatic double action. And then they were talking about bringing out a mini, which they changed the shape of. So when they changed the shape, it kind of, he had to rethink the action a bit. It's not the same knife. Very similar, but not the same.
Yeah, and I think they just recently stopped making the mini.
They did. They quit making the mini. They're going to continue, quote unquote, making the full size. And we've got a standing order, but we haven't seen any, and we haven't seen any more being produced yet. So,
I remember when the first one came out, and I was infatuated with it, and I couldn't afford it at the time. But I thought it was one of the better looking Spydercos that I'd seen at the time.
I think it was a better looking Spyderco. It was also a lot tougher than most anything they'd produced prior to that, and I'd had most
the
of them.
blades are super thick, aren't they?
Yeah, you can punch them through a car door, believe it or not.
Yeah,
I know.
Like
I did it. Yeah, and it's built to where you can hold on to it to do so. I mean, most knives, you remember, I don't know. I'm the old guy here, so I remember the old days where everybody was jamming blades through car doors and looking at you like, see?
Look, it works.
Well, I've been to a lot of hammer-ins, and these days they use 55-gallon drums, and you're like, it'll hold up.
Yep.
The amount of knives I've seen through 55-gallon drums, or every hammer-in, there's always a 55-gallon drum that's just been pierced to crap.
Yeah, it couldn't hold water now.
No, that Subhill Spyderco it's a thick boy. It's got it's a thick blade, it's a thick handle, it's a nice you can put your hand on it and grab it and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, and it was designed to have a penetrator tip. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a decent flare. It's got a nice guard that way. That's why I was saying you can actually. I remember the old days when people were jamming things through car doors, and they'd slide over the guard and slide right down the blade. And like, really, people?
That reminds me of that one video that we had talked about at, I think, the California Custom Show, about some fabled OTF that some guy was like just
the piranha,
stabbing, or something that was just stabbing a 55-gallon drum.
Oh,
it was completely
Desert
fine.
Knife Works Sand Shark.
Yeah.
That was right. That was a 50-gallon drum. People love. The thing is, people love stabbing knives through steel. That's there's a fascination with puncturing
Something
thick
that strong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's tip retention, it's heat treat, it's the whole.
Yeah, you can also do it with literally any hatchet.
Right.
That actually just reminded me.
Yeah.
At one point in my career, I was very into making bushcraft knives out of 3V.
Mm-hmm.
And the day I found out a 3V bushcraft knife could cut through a nail, I was like, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I took my knife, I made it convex ground, because that was the shit in 2012. And took a hammer. Yeah, but back then it was the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Took a hammer and 2 hits through. I went through the nail, and I was like, "This is amazing. A knife could cut a nail." And I would tell that to all my customers. That's why you want 3V for your bushcraft knives.
Yeah, nobody I guess realizes nails were soft.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's the newer steels today. There's some of those that are pretty amazing. M390, that's not a lot newer, but it's a much newer, at least for some of us anyway. S30, X60, and then it gets crazier as it goes.
Yeah, a bunch
I would
of super
imagine-
steels.
I would imagine that there's a definite jump. That like between this steel and that steel, like there's a lot of filler, I think, and then like between, like you said, M390, I'm sure that's a lot better than whatever, but there's a whole lot of stuff that's in between.
Yeah,
I don't think
there is.
Yeah.
And a lot of steel that doesn't get the press that it needs either. I mean, when it first started out, everybody was digging the ATS 34. Well, ATS was done by Hitachi, so everybody decided, well, you can't import your steel. You got to have it made in the U.S. So then 154 CM was out, and then Crucible did another one. Actually, it was very similar to ATS, virtually identical, to be dead honest. But because it was produced here, it was the big deal, So it's Hitachi ATS is probably one of the best steels I ever used. 154 CM is equally as good because, again, it's virtually identical. But, there's a lot of steel out there that are worth using. Yeah, ETS 34. Probably one of the...
It's really, really easy to polish.
It polishes nice. It will hold an edge. That little Hunter that I was telling you about in the very first knife, that's out of 440C, and I was, back then I wasn't even a fan of 440C. And then I've made some D2s. It's not a true stainless because it's not above 14%, but it's still a really great steel. But it's ironically more expensive than ATS. So yeah, it makes no sense to me. At one time you could get D2 for dirt cheap. And I don't know if anybody's looked at Jersey Steel Baron, but D2's higher than 154 CM or, virtually anything else as far as that non-stainless goes.
That's because Nick is probably taking it all or something.
I don't use the D2.
Well,
I don't use it unless it's 3.
You're up there like every weekend, it seems like.
Well, I used to work there.
You worked at the Baron?
No, when I went full time, when I graduated high school, I was in college for a semester, and I came home one day, and I'm like, Mom, I'm out. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm gonna go make knives full time for a year. I got an apartment lined up in Jersey in a shop. I'm out next week, and I used to talk to Pete a lot there, and they offered me to rent some shop space out from them, and I did that for about 2.5 years. Eventually, I ended up living with Pete for 2 of the years. So
that had to be a story in itself.
Yeah, it was an interesting 2 years. Well, I ended up learning a lot about steels and metallurgy and water jetting.
Yep.
So I learned quite a bit from that side of the business. But like I said, I saw a lot of what knife makers were not a normal bunch of people. So
no.
I got to see the customer service to deal with a bunch of knife makers, and that was pretty fun. People come out screaming every other day. Like, God.
Yeah, Case Knives was...
I just worked more alongside them than with them.
Huh. Case Knives was looking at one time, actually coming out of the Dark Ages. And so we got an invite to go up there and hang out with those guys for a week in Pennsylvania. And it was fun, but they're really not wanting to move out of what they do. For the most part. I mean, they're making efforts of it, but it was funny because we got there and got to talking, and they had another maker in there just a couple of months before us, and that was one of the things. Don, he's the executive financial officer. He took us out to dinner, and he says, "Knife makers are a strange breed, aren't they?" I said, I don't know. Are they?
You
started to tell me this story about the last guy they had out, and he got done with it. I looked at him and I said, "Are you kidding me? You guys dealt with all that? Oh my God!" Some of us are rather strange characters in this business. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
it's also
that's true.
We're also technically not machinists that are pretending to be machinists.
Yeah, I don't call. Yeah, no.
So
I'm
like
not a machinist.
Most of us don't actually understand how metal should come and what it should be, and you expect everything to be flat and perfect, and that doesn't happen unless you're in the perfect world, which we're not.
Nope.
So I just every day he pull his hair out, a customer will call and be like, "My steel isn't straight," and he's like, "It doesn't come straight. That's your job." and or like it's not polished. So he's like, you're not buying a mirror, you're buying a raw piece of steel. Like those are always the two things he'll come up
It's
with his hair
bent.
out.
A steel's bent. Well, it's soft. You can bend it back.
Yep. I got a batch of steel from Chad one time, and not one bar was even remotely straight. And I'd never gotten, you don't get straight steel from a Damascus maker, but I'd never gotten steel that looked like this. And I called him up and I said, "Did you send me pretzels? Did you send me steel?" And he kind of gave me the same thing. Steel, man, you straighten it.
You figure it out, guy. I did the hard
These were
part.
really bent, though.
Yeah, I guess if you have to ask it, like if you got to talk about if it's bent or not, I guess you're in the wrong. You're in the wrong business.
Yeah, you get straight bars 72 inches long, and you look down them, and they're definitely not straight, even if they're coming from Admiral or Crucible or anybody else for that matter.
It's like trying to find a straight 2x4 at Lowe's.
Or if
impossible.
you've ever heard of cold roll steel versus hot roll, one has a memory. So when you heat treat it, you better be prepared to straighten it if you're heat treating it yourself, because it has a great memory.
I wouldn't know. I just don't buy it. Cold roll
It
steel.
just wants to spring right back. That's the thing.
Well, yeah. Anytime you heat treat it, it'll warp no matter what you're doing. I mean, I ran into AEBL, and I think this was probably cold rolled steel, but it was 12-inch wide by 7-foot long sheets. And I'm like, God, that's a boon, and it was cheap. But when you grind a Damascus blade, the heat on one side makes it warp a little bit. You flip it over and you grind it and it straightens out. Well, AEBL likes to bend the same direction no matter what you did with this stuff. It made me crazy.
Yeah, I kind of I'll use exclusively ABL.
Yeah.
I kind of got it down.
Rolled.
Well, no, it only comes from. I've always used it from Pete. I know he gets phone calls from it regularly once in a while that it's warping. I make folders, so it's part of the job to deal with warp at this point.
Yep.
I bend maybe every other blade after heat treat either way. So for me, it's whatever at that point.
Part of the deal.
I'm also machining 80, like a good chunk of my blade before heat treat, including half of the bevel. And I'm removing so much material no matter what I use, it's going to warp. I usually expect my blades to warp heavily during machining to where in my process, they're always clamped flat. So while they're being machined, they're at least flat.
Yeah.
And then I can't send out for heat treat anymore because they don't plate quench. They air quench. So now it's in my process and my parts have to be plate quenched, for folders at least. And then once in a while they warp and I have to straighten them with the little jig that I made. But it's just kind of in the process of making knives now. When I first started, I used to go crazy. It's warped. How do I straighten this? What do I do? And now it's just part of the job.
Yeah. And back then you could send them off and get them back straight. But yeah.
I haven't had good luck with sending out for heat treat in the last year and a half or two.
So Rainy, I'm gonna wrangle it back in from the technical side a little bit. So everything that you've been doing full time as a knife maker, you're still doing that full time now. So I mean, you're still building all these dual actions, pretty much the same way with modifications that you have been, and following in the tradition. And there's a whole new, like you have kids, so there's a whole new era of Vallottons.
Yeah, 3 of them now.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
3 boys are back in the shop.
And you taught those guys, and they learned from Butch, or how does that?
No, they learned from me mostly.
Okay.
I'm a better teacher than my dad was. You had, like I said, you had to be really receptive to learn from my dad, because it wasn't do this and this is why, or this could happen, or none of that went on. It was he showed you, and then you learned it, and then you incorporated it, and that's kind of how that worked. But with the boys, they started young, and well, let me step back. I got an apprentice. His name was Nate Clark. You guys may have heard of him. He's a knife maker still. He doesn't do a lot of knives these days. He does all kinds of other odds and ends. But Nate, in his sophomore year, of high school was looking for something to do. And so I brought him into the shop and started teaching him. And by the time he graduated high school and turned 21, he'd been my apprentice for 7 years. And so he became the maker that I was of a sort. You know, I didn't teach him the whole planet in that short a time. He was busy doing a lot of other stuff for me. But I literally figured out it's far easier to teach somebody who's never done anything in knives than it is to try and teach somebody that has an idea what they're supposed to do in making knives. And like Nick was saying, I'm not a machinist. I wouldn't boast or even I wouldn't even broach that as a conversation because I am no machinist. I am an Etch-a-Sketch machinist, maybe, but that's as good as that gets. And I only know this because my dad bought a CNC machine. We got a Mini Mill 2, and we sent him off to learn some stuff. And so he went off to class, and he had a good time, and he found out that most machinists are the guys that come in, hit start and hit stop, pallet change, hit start, hit stop, pallet change, and that's what they do. And they're considered machinists. But the guy that was teaching the class flat out said, if you can't go in and program it, or you can't go in and design it, and then go over to your machine and tell your machine what to do, whether you're doing it by knobs or by CNC or whatever, and get the product that you're looking for out the other end, you're not a machinist, or you are a machinist at that point. But you're not a machinist if you walk in, push the button to make the machine start, it kicks out a part, and then you get a new pallet. So
you're a machine operator at that point.
Yeah, and the reason he said that was there was a guy in the previous class that came in and learned all this stuff from this guy. To give you an idea, this guy actually helped Bobcat design his program to work for us. Not us personally, but the industry. And he's a Russian guy. He's very Russian. And he met this guy, and so the guy went home, and then Sunday he called him. He said, hey, after the class today, you think you could come over and give me some pointers? And he said, sure. So he went over there, and the guy's got himself a brand new mini mill sitting there and got tools laying everywhere and collets and all this stuff. And he says, so how does this thing work? He goes, what do you mean, how does this thing work? You said you were a machinist. He said, well, I am. I went into the company, and they pointed the machine out, and I went over and I pushed the button to start it, and I pushed the button to stop it. He said, but I don't even know how to turn this thing on. So it was a wake-up call for him to realize that, you know, if you're going to be a machinist, you got to be able to do it all, not just start the machine and then turn it off.
That makes sense. Well-rounded.
It does, and that's why I call myself an Etch-a-Sketch machinist, because while I use my numbers, I use a digital readout, and you know, I work with a specific set of numbers. I still have a lot of leeway. I can play within that frame. I can even experiment and do whatever I want in process. So, you know, unlike a CNC machine, you know, you don't get that advantage. You can sit there if you've got a laptop right on the machine, and you can tweak and play with it there. That's one thing. But like my son, he goes up the stairs, plugs it into the computer, designs it, makes it work, does it virtually, then he brings it down to the machine, plugs it in, and makes the machine do it above the work surface so that it looks right, runs through its numbers right, doesn't hiccup. And then if it doesn't look right, he goes up and he changes and tweaks with it and plays with it. And then he'll eventually come down and give it some steel to work on. And the first time within 2 weeks of having the CNC, he had built a butterfly knife, fully functioning butterfly knife. And,
that must be Kyle.
It is.
Okay.
It is. And he, you know, when he got to this class, he put that butterfly knife at the top of his desk. And when it came time to leave, the teacher of the class was trying to keep the knife. So, and he flat told him, he said, you know, has anybody got anything they've done on their own in class? And the only one to raise his hand was Kyle. So Kyle literally they got the machine in, he started playing with it, they got the program, next thing you know, he's making knives with it. So that's our machinist.
that's pretty handy. All right.
I got a Haas Mini Mill too. I got a Haas Mini Mill. But like we were saying, I actually used to use the same term, etch-a-sketch machinist. Because again, I was self-taught. But when I became a CNC machinist, I upgraded to professional asshole engineering. Professional asshole engineering.
Yeah, but you're closer to a machinist.
I get her done. Like,
yeah.
When I watch actual machinists work, I'm like, oh, that's how you do that. Okay,
right.
But today, I'm like, I get it done. I get it done like properly, but
it's
with my own methods. And when a machinist watches me work, they're like, oh, that's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, shaking their head like, you got there, but how'd you get there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I made it work. This is my methodology for it. When I talk to a real machinist, a CNC machinist, it's like you're speaking. Like, I understand what they're saying, but when they really get into the letters and the numbers of it, where like the actual G code, I'm like, yeah, you're talking foreign, guy. I don't do it that way.
It becomes nerddom at that point.
Yeah.
I wish I knew it. It's just I'm like, I don't know it.
You go to school for something like that, pretty much.
It's kind of the thing is, it's also kind of outdated. It's good to know, but it's kind of outdated. The
really
software's kind of generated it all for you.
It's still based off G code, though. It's the interesting part. It's still a G code kind of theory, quite a bit different. But we bought a CNC, but it was just a converted Bridgeport with a computer, and and we had a guy come in and build us the driver box, and then we hooked the computer up to the driver box and actually used it a little bit, but it was really, that was hardcore basic as you can get without, doing it all by hand. It was crazy. In fact, we still got the POS in the shop, and I'm trying to get rid of it, but it had a bandit box they were using for the table, and the bandit box, when you opened up the top, it had all these computer little motherboards, little sideways motherboards, and they look like graphics cards without the fans on them. And there was maybe 60 in there, and basically that was a G code converter from the computer they were working on. So they feed this information into this converter, and it would convert G code. It would convert computer lingo back to G code, and then make the CNC machine do it. It was pretty bizarre. Eventually, we changed out that whole bandit box and put a computer up there with the driver box, and there was a few things done with it, but my dad never chased it. It wasn't really what he wanted to do. So when we got the CNC, the mini mill, and finally got my kid involved, then my kid just took off and ran with it. So.
I mean, that's good when you show something like that, and you really dive into it.
Yeah.
So he took an actual class.
He took it. Yeah. After he learned to use Bobcat and built his first butterfly knife in the CNC, he took the class. Kind of seems like the cart before the horse, but
I just always know more. I want to take a class now. Just they don't really have them in New York, and I don't have time to travel. I got to run the business.
Well,
I ran it for almost 4 years. I know what I'm doing, but I know I could do it better.
Right. When we get out of here, catch up with Jeremiah. You can get my email from him. Plug you into Kyle, and he could probably give you the information for this guy. I think this guy goes all over the country, including New York. But you got to know the guy. We ended up hooked up with the guy from Bobcat to this teacher. And like I said, he helped Bobcat write the programming originally for Bobcat's original first set, which was, at the time it was a quarter of the price of Mastercam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mastercam's in fact, you don't even get to keep Mastercam anymore. You got to rent it. So,
yeah, it's like 10 G's.
That's how they get you, man.
It's a pretty penny.
Mastercam?
Yeah, Bobcat you can pick up for $2,400.
Yeah, that's my problem. It's like buy a CNC, then buy the software, then learn all this stuff.
I use Fusion. It's my actual Fusion ran out today. I'm literally doing it as we speak, and it's like your terms have ended, which means I could use it, but I can't run the CNC tomorrow. So I gotta renew it.
Yep. Well, with Bobcat, you get to keep your license for as long as you keep your license. In fact, Kyle's got to get a hold of Bobcat and renew his license only because the hard drive that he had it on went south on him. So no more license, no more program. Although we have the program on disk, he's still got to get a license to run it.
What kind of Bridgeport is it, that CNC that is converted?
Oh God, it's an old. Oh man,
is it a dovetail RAM?
What's that mean?
The RAM.
Elijah, we're not machinists. We just buy the machines that work and we run
Are you
them.
talking about the bed being dovetailed?
Not the bed, the head. Is the head on top? Does it go back and forth? Is it dovetailed? Or is it round?
No.
Most of them are dovetailed.
It's shit, I don't know, to be honest.
Well,
like I said,
because I have one. I have a 1946 Bridgeport, and it's a round RAM.
No one wants those.
Are you talking about the RAM being like the head itself?
Yeah.
Or
what the head's on, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. It's round.
Okay. Wow. Oh, so it's real old then.
Yeah, it's we picked it up with a cherry picker that you pick motors out of cars with. And so we straddled the base, moved the head all the way back so it would balance out. We even spun the head sideways to get it to balance out a little better. But it's got a air-fed lock set of jaws. Reach up and push the button. It sucks the tool right in and holds onto it nice and tight. Then the drivers on the bed, X and Y axis.
It sucks to call it up in there. Man, that sounds fancy. On mine, you gotta get a damn wrench and torque and tighten it up by hand.
Yep. That's what I do with my basic manuals. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, this one's got an airlock head or an air-fed head, and I'm just trying to find a new home for it. I have no desire to keep it. It's what I want with. So.
How much you want for it?
Elijah, you're never gonna make knives. You don't need it. Turn your first power.
Hey, that's easier. That is way easier than moving one all the way from Ohio.
Oh yeah, you're on the same coastline as I am, aren't you?
I'm in Portland.
Get a shop, guy.
Yeah, I need to
come
get
on down.
shop space and.
You're not gonna be able to bring it to the second floor at Bill's place.
Well, I'm 2 hours and 40 minutes from you, buddy. Just go
true.
South. Come by and say hi.
I will. I'll come back.
You know where Rice Hill's at?
Something out.
You ever been down south?
That? No,
Rice Hill.
not much. Not at all.
Okay, well, it's 40 minutes south of Eugene.
Cool.
And 5 minutes off the freeway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just waiting to get that rolling. I was saying, we were all going to be out there for Blade Show West, but that plan went south quick.
Yeah, we were going to look into the table even.
Yeah.
Tables are pretty inexpensive. I was going to get one right before they said they were going to cancel it, but they're pretty good price. I think it'll be pretty good show if it lasts.
Well, it's a step up from where it used to be by a long shot. So
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. My son's partners in Horse Cave Junction, Kentucky, and he drove out to hang out with us at the show, and we all went up to see the Blade Show West, and I hadn't been up there in a while, and the last time I saw it was at the Red Lion Inn, and it was really, really bottom
Matt Cook
of the barrel
told me
at the
some
time.
stories. Yeah,
it was pathetic.
And
then so we went up and got to see this one. It was actually it was Blade Show-esque at least.
Right. In presentation, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, presentation, the way it was set up. The other room, the secondary room wasn't so nice, which is where Reese and I sat and shot the shit for 2 hours. But
you're still full time now. People can still contact you to make knives. I mean, you're still taking orders, or how does that work?
No, I still take orders. Take orders from dealers, mostly buyers, of course. Buyers are my bread and butter as far as that goes. Dealers are my extra fun because they get a little bit of a better break, and they order 5 or better at a time. So it's a little less time to make 5 knives at one time than it is to make 5 knives end to end to end. And I'm almost always got at least 8 or 9 knives going at one time. So in various points. But, if you start 6 knives and they all work the same function and they all have the same liner lock, even if they're not the same pattern, it's still, you're running the same set of numbers. You're doing the same processes over and over and over again. So you can mark them all out, get them all prepped, walk over to the machine, punch down, cut a slot. All of them are done. When you get done, walk back to the desk and then move on to the next step. So it changes the time frame from, a week and a couple of days to, if I started 5 knives on January 1, I'll be done with all those same set knives by the 20th. So
that's fast.
Yeah. Well, we do for Blade, we set up 40 to 55 days in advance, and we work on anywhere between 12 and 15 pieces each. And then generally within, 10 minutes or so before we have to leave, we finish them up and either fly them or ship them. So,
I mean, that's the way to do it. The Blade Show Crunch is the ultimate,
it is brutal.
Yeah. No,
Sounds
it's
like
intense.
Working up until the last minute.
Yeah. Well, see, up until a couple of years ago, we'd always been done a few days before the show. And I'll say a few, anywhere between 2 and 4, if we're lucky. And so we'd always ship them out there originally. And then one year we got where we were way behind. Really, we were either dragging tail or we just weren't doing our job. I don't know which, but Dad said, I just found out from the airlines we can ship all these by them, and all we have to do is put it in a hard case, lock it, tell them it's trade show goods, or we can put a pistol in there and they'll guard it, and cost us $50 each way if we ship them back. Well, crap. That saves the hell out of the $500 I just got quoted by FedEx to ship them out there for delivery day after tomorrow with, $20,000 worth of insurance, which wasn't enough to cover the job, but it would have been enough to at least pay for the trip and go on. But then again, a couple years back after that, we literally did not finish but 5 of the knives we were taking to the show. They were aesthetically finished, but they weren't functioning. So we didn't quite know what to do. So we got to the show and we did what I called a fire sale. Somebody that wanted a knife gave us half down. We would cover return shipping. We'd give them $100 off of what our original asking price was, and we'd ship it to them within a week. We sold all the damn knives. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen.
Wow.
Oh, it was bizarre. And there was 6 of us that went to the show. We literally walked out of the shop after 52-hour stretch, got in a van, drove all the way to Portland, jumped on an airplane. I can't imagine how we smelled. And got all the way to Atlanta. Couldn't get into our hotel room until 3:00, and we were there at 9 a.m. Oh, it was a disaster. The whole thing was a disaster. But we sold every knife at the show, and everybody that piled in said, "That's a hell of a deal. We'll take it," and it was great. We were literally assembling knives sitting at the table.
Hey, I mean, you know what? That's selling them is what counts, right? That's good.
Oh, and we had 2 sick people. My wife had come with us, and she was sick. And Kyle, he was sick, so those 2 were at the hotel room. I take it back. There was only 4 of us, and it was me and my daughter-in-law, Jamie, Kyle's wife, sitting at the table Friday and most of Saturday before we got any help. But they were really sick, and so we're sitting at the table reassembling knives and putting things back together. And, they looked great. They didn't work for nothing because they didn't have no guts in them. And so it was the strangest thing I'd ever done. And then I got talked to one of our ish friends, and he said, "Yeah, that's the way I do every Blade show." I'm like, "Oh my God.
That's the way we do it all the time."
That. Yeah,
Oh,
I can't
man.
do that. He says,
It's like, hey, I'm here, but I couldn't get anything done.
Oh man.
Everybody has their own way. It seems everything's personal preference, or time crunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time.
But I've had
crunch.
some spectacular shows. I mean, the boys and I brought 56 one year, sold all 56 by Saturday evening, and I found that we ended up selling one of them twice, so I had to come home and make one really quick. So we actually sold 57 knives at the show.
We've all been there with the building at shows. I've had to assemble entire batches of knives. I've brought knives that I didn't have a chance to sharpen and went to Clay over at Wicked Edge, and I was like, hey man, like, I'm an owner of your product. I couldn't sharpen my knives. Can you give me 30 minutes on your Wicked Edge so I can sharpen these 5 knives? And I did it. I taped them up so as to not get the internals all dusty. And sharpened them, stropped them, and had them on my table like 10 minutes before the show opened up.
Boom.
Yeah, I went over to Wilmot and sharpened one year. Asked him if I could use their grinder to sharpen a knife. He says, as long as I can take pictures, I have a ball.
You go for it. Take as many pictures as you want.
Yeah, I actually left the show one time and went to, you guys heard of Bill Harsey? Spartan Knives?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a friend of ours. He's between Eugene and me. And I was at the Eugene show, and I was delivering a knife and had a big fat thumbprint on the blade. Somebody either was eating an orange or something and left enough citrus on their thumb or something. And it could have been myself. In fact, it was probably me. But yeah, big etched thumbprint.
Damn,
so
that's gonna suck.
I asked him if I could use his shop. And he said, hey, have a ball. So I went all the way back down to his place, whopping 25 minutes from the show. Rebuffed and cleaned that blade, put it all back together, and came back and delivered it. So
hey, that's all. That's all part of it.
Yeah, it is.
Bill Harsey's in Oregon.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Cresswell, Oregon. Yeah, if you come down to see me, you might call him and drop by and say hi on your way through.
So there we go.
He's pretty famous.
Yeah, and be prepared. When he shakes your hand, he's gonna. Well, when he shakes your hand, remember he's a logger. He don't shake like no limp fish.
I gotta say, no one's shook my hand as hard as my dad. So, like, he still has the hardest handshake of any man I've ever met. So,
well, you let me know when you shake Bill's hand if it's any better or any worse.
Yeah, there's no telling.
He's a pretty stout man, big guy. Being the guy that does what I do in the shop that I do it in, I guess, because my dad's not around anymore, is kind of a big chunk of responsibility that I don't think I was ever prepared for. But, having my kids and our grandbaby, I have a beautiful little baby girl grandbaby, 5.5 months old. It makes every day a little bit interesting, like I said, I was born and raised in San Jose, California, Sunnyvale, California. Been to many Baca shows, tons and tons of San Francisco shows, just all over in the Bay Area originally. And having moving out of there and getting out of that sewage pit, and moving up here was probably the best thing I'd ever done for myself. And my wife is originally from Alaska, so this is more like home for her than the Bay Area was. And we live on the side of a mountain on 13 acres, and we live about a mile off of the freeway, or off of the river. And so in the summertime, we get to go swimming and fishing, and the wintertime, it's pretty noisy and wet. So, but it's, watching the world go by and watching the stuff that's been going on over the last couple of years is, I'm really glad I'm not in the cities anymore.
Yeah, I just moved to one, and I'm thinking about leaving already.
Yeah, especially Portland lately. Good God.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely stick with the Pacific Northwest, because I have definitely fallen in love with the gorgeous scenery everywhere. It's just incredible.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And see, the shop is 5 minutes off of I-5, but I live 30 minutes from the shop, towards the coast. And I live literally way out in the sticks. In fact, I was telling Jeremiah, my phone will not receive texts or phone calls out here.
Oh yeah.
Mostly because it's a cheesy carrier, but also because we just recently got fiber, and before that we had DSL.
Oh.
And then we only had DSL for about for 4 or 5 years, and prior to that, we had dial-up.
Oh, wow.
And so we've literally only had decent internet for about the last 8 years.
Well, better late than never kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. We got a gig now. Nice.
Oh, yeah. See, there you are.
But, yeah, it's kind of strange. I didn't realize how young Nick was to begin with. How old are you, Elijah?
Most people don't. They're like, wait, you've known this for this long? I'm like, yeah, it just happened that way.
I'm 26.
No, you're both fairly young then.
Yeah, he's exactly 2 years older.
Yeah, you're the first person to ask me, actually, that I've had to tell since I turned 26.
That was like a week ago, guy.
I moved up here when I turned.
Asks me how. That's not a question you get too often.
Yeah, we had 2 kids before we moved up here, and I think I was 27 when we moved up here, and 26 maybe, something like that. So about the same time, And then I worked at making plywood for 3 years, better part of 3 years anyway, and learned to make knives in the meantime. And by the time the mill I was working in went down, I was making knives almost full time at that time. But I was making automatics and folders and stuff like that then. And I've been doing automatics literally since 1991. In fact, the first year knives are Rainy Vallotton custom knives, 91. And at the end of that year, I quit using that stamp. So any of them marked 91 are the first year I made knives full time.
That's a good bit of collector info.
Yeah,
okay.
Most people don't know that. And then they were stamped again for a while, and then we went to the Diamond Scratch. And so 94 or 95, we went to the Diamond Scratch. So anything prior to that's the second, third, and maybe fourth year I've been making knives.
Okay. So all right, yeah. That reminded me of something, but the Viper logo is associated with the Vallotton name. How does the use? I mean, you use that. You use the Viper.
Actually, I don't use the Viper V. The boys do, with my dad's conversions that they were doing.
Okay.
His logo still goes on them. And in fact, you guys are going to start to see another Viper V come out again on a limited edition for a tribute to my pop here in the very near future. And they'll be kind of up your alley, Nick. They're going to be frame lock machines, but they'll be of the Chameleon. At least the first set. I
pretty much do frame locks. I'm getting into coil fired button autos, but I've always wanted to make a dual action. Just, maybe at some point.
You got to make your own coil, though.
No, thinking your own coils are stupid.
Got to make it full custom.
Flat wire coils is the way to go.
I've never been a coil fan, but they serve their purpose and they work really well. No,
I designed up a dual action. I just don't have time to make it, but I kind of have one where the sear and everything fits in there with the actuator and with the scale release version. Kind of actually designed it, not necessarily a scale release. I took inspiration from the Spyderco you guys do when I saw it at Jerry's shop.
Okay.
With the little bolster slide.
Right.
But I wanted it to be a frame lock with everything hidden on the inside of the frame. And just have that little bolster piece. No, as a dual action.
Oh, okay.
So cool. With a leaf spring.
So instead of the whole scale moving, I was watching your Spyderco where that little 1-inch wide bolster area slides.
Right.
So I essentially wanted to make it as a frame lock with just this little bolster inlay thing, and that slides, and the mechanism is on the inside of the actual full tie handle, and it kind of works. It's gonna need some advanced tooling and some advanced cam tool pads to make it work. You can go to town with a Dremel, but that's not what I do to get it out there. Or in theory it works, but I've never done it, so I don't know. It was just something I was messing around with that one time every so often.
Cool. That sounds interesting. First, I thought you were talking about a scale release coiler dual action. I thought, wow, you've been looking under the SOCOM lids.
Yeah,
I was about to say that. I heard the
Pretty
chameleons
deep.
tried that, but they didn't really work.
No, it
The
didn't.
dual action coil fire.
Yeah, the chameleons
it's a
were
dual
like,
action.
were breaking.
Yeah, they were breaking. Those were all Microtech.
Yep.
They had some other issues too that we walked them through, but yeah, the SOCOM was actually the first coiler button release that's dual action. Thanks to Tony's maniacal mind. But,
Has anyone done a scale release where the scale just slides forward a little bit?
Yep, me.
I was about to say, because it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's called the slide winder.
Yeah, because instead of having like a mech to push that sear over, why not just attach the sear to the damn scale?
Actually, the first one I did is just the bolster, but there's a saddle and a spring system that draws the bolster back into place, and it's got guides. I mean, I there's probably 100 easier ways to do it than the way I did it, but you slid it forward. It actually had bearings under the bolster because it's really hard to make those two cooperate with each other. Titanium and Damascus and titanium and steel are not fond of each other, or they're too fond of each other, depending on the situation. But polished and buffed and clean, they still didn't want to move slickly. So I actually put bearings underneath the bolster and made the first double action liner lock slide forward bolster release, and it was called the slide winder. And then there's another one where I slid the whole handle, like you were just talking about, scale, both bolsters, scale and all. And then my dad actually made a slide action 45 out the front. That's what we called it. You grab the handle and you slide the top scale out, and it locked the blade under the handle, and then you slid it back in place and fired the button, and it was out the front. They're rare. There's only maybe 6 of them ever.
I want to see one of those now.
Oh,
wait. So it opens normally? Wait, can you explain that once more?
It's out the front.
I absolutely
The
can't
top
picture
scale. The top scale actually draws the blade, locks the function when you slide the handle back to its original position, so it looks just like a handle with nothing in it. Then you push the button and the blade comes out. It had a secondary lock that locked the blade by itself. So you push the lock, slide it back, relock the blade, put the handle back in the original position.
Hard to make, I assume.
Oh, yeah. I was always wondering how my dad had hair longer than I did. It was his forte, though. That's what he did best. He's got multiple patents. He's got people that designed and used his designs all over the place. I mean,
how many patents are under the Vallotton name?
I think he has 6 or 8.
That's impressive.
I actually have one that my name isn't mentioned in with Tony. You would know it as the LCC function or the MTX2.
I was meant to ask about that MTX project.
Yeah, that was actually my function. I was paid for it. I was paid by him to use it, but he didn't ask me if he could patent it. So, but it's that's water under the bridge by a great many years.
That was a couple days ago.
Yeah, long time ago.
I
got a handsome paycheck out of it, but
Yeah, the patent thing is tricky with mechanisms.
It is. Design patents are even worse.
Yeah. I mean, because you must have the patents on the sears, the sear patents. That gets tricky. Anyway.
Well, there's a lot involved.
Right.
There's a lot of patents out there. There's a lot of design patents out there. In fact, if you're really smart, you're watching those design patents, because if somebody doesn't pay the upkeep on them, you can actually not only produce them, but you can kick in and take some of those patents by changing information and adapting those into your own patent. At least you could at one time. Now you can I know that you can watch them, and as soon as nobody pays the maintenance on them and they go public, then anybody can use them. So
yeah, I was just talking to Jason about that, because the Axis lock
that seems to have really kicked off.
Free roam now.
Yeah. That's one of a great many ways to get that. Then you got to remember you got to change it like at least 35 to 40% to create a new function off of an original. Like, if you wanted to take the axis lock, see, and I watched Bill design that and stuff. In all intents and purposes, by the way, that's really the bolt action lock, only run by a pair of by a spring and a couple of pull points rather than a slide point. So I was always amazed he got that patent through, but them and Benchblade fell in love with it, so they did great stuff with it.
Yeah, they made a couple knives with that on it.
Yeah,
one or two.
For all intents and purposes, if you look at it, it's the original bolt action.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. Just the way it pulls like that.
Yeah, well, the way that it locks up the back of the blade.
Yeah,
it literally just locks up the rear of the tang so that it won't fold. And the original bolt action, while a little more elaborate than this, did exactly the same thing. There's actually about 15 or 20 actions out there that do the same thing. But
I was just about to say that, like they're all variants of the same kind of thing. Yeah.
And then Spyderco had the ball lock. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. I played with doing that one for a long time. I didn't get it to work like I wanted it to. So I never really chased that one out. But the interesting thing is my dad designed the world's first assisted opener. The only problem was he thought it was broken. So he fixed it so it wouldn't do that anymore. If you end up ever getting a knife called the drawbar, that's the world's first assisted opener. Nobody really knows it because he couldn't, he thought it was broken. It wasn't supposed to work that way.
Like, wait a minute, that's not right.
Yeah.
It ended up being a big selling point.
Yeah, well, it would have been a really great selling point if he'd have, seen what it was capable of at that point. But basically the drop bar was a bar that was an assisted bar with a slight spring in the tail. So you flicked the blade open and the bar actually became your lock, not your liner lock, but it locked up in the same place as the liner lock with a little ball, an eccentric ball on the end of the spring into an eccentric notch. And then when you wanted to unlock it, you just pushed the bar out of the way and folded it up. But it would work. It would work as an assisted. And he had to fight with it to try and make it not work as an assisted back in the day. And if he'd have known what he was doing, he literally developed the first assisted opener.
What year was that, you think?
Oh, my God. 92? I had one in here not too long ago. It actually lives in Moscow, Russia. I had to work on it. 92 or 93.
Oh, wow. That was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, long before assisteds were even a dream.
The word hadn't even been thrown around at all. Yeah.
No, he had just coined the term double action in a knife at the time, somewhere around the same time frame that the liner lock term was coined by Michael Walker. Yeah. See, he wanted to patent that, except there was two companies. Case was one of them. Charade was another one that had a thing called a liner safety. Back, God, in the 50s.
Oh yeah, the liner lock
with it on it.
Yeah, that's existed.
And it's just a little brass safety bar that's part of the liner that comes over, and it doesn't lock it open. It just gets in the way, But I had one with perlite on it, and one side was slip joint, and the other side was liner safety. So he couldn't patent it, but he could coin the phrase liner lock, which he did.
Yeah, the terminology also becomes very crucial.
Have the same ring to it.
No,
it doesn't.
Yeah,
and it didn't lock it open. Like I said, while it did lock it open, as in you couldn't close it with the safety in the way, the blade wasn't tight. It flopped around. It had enough movement, that it wasn't really tight. But it was still a slip joint, so it'd stay open. But that safety wouldn't interrupt it soon enough to be considered a lock by any stretch.
Yeah, the patent terminology, that's a whole other can of worms right there. I've done my fair share of patent reading, and it's You really, yeah, like you said, the amount it has to change to repatent something like that and to refile
Yep.
becomes
Yep.
tricky. Becomes tricky.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Something I've never been wanting to dig into, but then again, that's why I got a CNC kid, because I don't want to do that either.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, you might call me lazy as far as that goes. I love what I do. I truly, truly enjoy what I do every day. But when it comes to that CNC box and sitting down drawing on a program, I've done it, but it's not my forte. I don't like it. Not my thing.
I don't blame you. I miss the old ways. Every time it was something different. And before I had the CNC, I did it for 3 years full time prior, and now it's when you make something a new model or something new, but now I have a set in stone process for every folder I do. Doesn't matter the design; it's all the same components frame lock wise, and it just becomes kind of synonymous, like the same thing in and out. Hit the green button and let it rip. Go put parts aside. Do it 60 more times. Obviously, there's more to it. Usually, it's prior to hitting the green button. Once you're ready to hit that green button, you just have to change the tools once in a while. And after that's ready, put them together, set lock and D10, grind them. Hey, what finish? Cool, next. It's kind of the same thing. I get more excited for like fixed blades and these little one-off things on the side than folders these days, because it's kind of the same thing these days.
Yeah, after we did 250 Sidewinders, I was definitely ready to go do anything else. That's a lot of knives, but
it feels like a job at that point. This thing called a job.
Yeah, it was a lot like a job. Yeah, and today I get to do new stuff every day, or all the time. So, and then somebody waltzes me into something new. Something's new all the time. If it gets stagnant, I wouldn't enjoy it. But doing something new, trying something new, finding another way of doing something you've been doing for years that takes a fraction of the time. Anything like that is nice.
I think it's great to see the continuation of sort of the whole process, the switchblades, the dual actions, the conversions. The Vallottons are a crucial piece of the puzzle in the knife industry that has given so much and deserves to be certainly at the forefront of the automatic movement.
Thank you. We'll be doing some new stuff soon, so it'll be fun to play with, and I'll see to it you get to take a peek on the early end.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to want to stay as up to date as I can. And looking forward to new projects. With you and with Corey and certainly with Kyle.
It'll be all of us actually. So.
Oh, see, there we go.
Yeah, we'll be doing it as a group.
Nice. Okay, the ultimate family collaboration.
It'll be the ultimate. Yeah, it'll be really what we were hoping to do for a great many years, but we'll get to do it. Provided I can light fires under some tails, but yeah.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I love it. I think on that note, I think we've reached a pretty good spot for tonight. And Rainy, I really do. I thank you so much for taking time out of your night and jumping on here and talking with us. I hope we can do this again, because I know there are more stories.
Oh yeah, lots. A lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do a follow-up, a part 2.
Cool. Sounds fun.
On that note, I'm gonna start it, and I'll sign off. This is Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas. Everybody, thanks so much for listening to another great episode of the Bladeology podcast.
This is Nick Chuperin from NCC Knives, and you could find me at NCC Knives on Instagram or on my website, nccknives.com. Thank you.
This is Elijah Isham of Isham Blade Works. You can find me at Isham Blade Works on Instagram and Gmail. Thank you.
And this is Rainy Vallotton. You can find me at rainyvck.com. And we'll talk to y'all later.